Iran struck a tanker transiting through the Strait of Hormuz as the United States fired at Iran for a 10th consecutive night. US President Donald Trump imposed 50% tariffs on most Canadian goods, citing unfair treatment on American cars, alcohol, and dairy products.
Britain's new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, pledges to set out new measures to help tackle the cost of living before setting out a new 10-year plan for the country later this year.
Iran said on Tuesday it struck US military assets in Bahrain and Kuwait, targeting air defense systems and a radar at different US outposts. Iran's armed force also attacked a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, forcing the crew aboard to abandon the vessel. The IRGC said it had stopped the tankers that were transiting through what they called an unsafe southern route of the strait after explosions caused fire on the vessels. On its end, the United States military announced it completed its 10th consecutive night of strikes against Iran, targeting sites in an effort to counter Tehran's ability to attack ships passing through the strait. In recent weeks, fighting has intensified significantly between the two sides, bringing traffic through the waterway almost completely to a halt and pushing oil prices up. On Monday, Iranian Interior Minister Eskander Momemi arrived in Pakistan for official talks. His visit comes as Pakistan continues its mediation efforts to end fighting between the US and Iran, although the intention of Momemi's trip remains unclear. US President Donald Trump imposed 50% tariffs on most Canadian goods in retaliation for what he called unequal treatment on American cars, alcohol, and dairy products. The White House said Canada was one of the two countries, along with China, to retaliate against Trump's previous duties in 2025. The new tariffs would include a range of goods, including everyday items, but would exclude energy products, potash, fish, and critical minerals. The White House said the tariffs would go into effect in 30 days. While Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Ottawa is prepared to negotiate with the Trump administration, the move could trigger a new wave of economic chaos. It risks leading to higher inflation and further straining the relations between the two nations that had long been closely connected before Trump's return to the White House. Also for Trump, the new tariffs carry serious political and economic risks ahead of the November midterm elections.
Andy Burnham became the UK's new Prime Minister on Monday, becoming the 7th Premier to preside over the country in 10 years as the UK's political turmoil continues. Starmer, who announced his stepping down just 1 month ago and speaking for the final time in his tenure of 2 years before tendering his resignation on Monday before the King, said his work is done and wished Burnham well in his mission to lead the country. Burnham was appointed by King Charles later the same day, inviting the former Greater Manchester Mayor to form a government. Speaking for the first time as Prime Minister, Burnham said he wants to usher in a new era for the UK.
Later this year, I will bring forward a new plan for Britain, a 10-year plan, laying out a path from where we are now to where I believe we all want Britain to be, wherever we're coming from, whatever party we support. But I can do something to give people some breathing space now, some help with the cost of living. And I will set out some of those measures starting tomorrow, including how we pay for them.
Londoners who've become accustomed to high Prime Minister turnover as of late have expressed hope that Burnham will turn the tide, and even optimism that he could overturn the very thing that has divided the nation.
Well, I think he seems like a nice man, from what I've seen from his campaigns up in Manchester. But I'm hoping that maybe I did hear that Andy Burnham might maybe bring us back into Europe, so you never know. That would be a good thing for the country, I think.
Burnham has been widely credited with positively transforming Manchester in his 9-year spell as mayor, a feat many are hoping he can replicate nationwide. Speaking outside 10 Downing Street, the newly appointed premier said his government aims to overhaul the education system, build more social facilities, and drag the UK out of economic decline.
The European Commission fined AliExpress €550 million for failing to adequately assess and mitigate risks linked to the sale of illegal, unsafe and counterfeit products on its e-commerce platform. The Chinese platform's product compliance checks were also found to be vulnerable to abuse, with malicious traders allegedly misclassifying products to exploit less stringent requirements. According to the European Commission, large volumes of illegal products continue to circulate on AliExpress despite moderation efforts.
The company itself reported that almost 15 million illegal products were recommended last year to users in the European Union. We're mostly speaking about unsafe and counterfeit products, such as cosmetics, toys, clothes or gadgets, to name just a few.
The fine is the latest development in formal proceedings launched in 2024 over a potential breach of the EU's Digital Services Act. AliExpress now has until the 20th of October 2026 to submit an action plan outlining how it will address the Commission's concerns.
Ukraine launched over 400 drones toward Moscow overnight on Monday, reportedly hitting an oil depot and a logistics center. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian forces also struck 2 Shadow Fleet tankers and 4 cargo ships in the Black Sea. Russian authorities claimed most of the drones were downed far from the capital and 85 were intercepted near Moscow. Russian officials said 10 people were wounded by Ukrainian drones and several residential buildings and civilian infrastructure were damaged. The attacks followed a weekend of escalating exchanges between the two sides, with Russia targeting Kyiv with ballistic missiles on Sunday and Ukraine hitting warehouses belonging to one of Russia's largest online marketplaces, Wildberries, outside of Moscow on Saturday. Russian media reported that another fire was reported at a warehouse belonging to the Russian online retailer in Ukraine's latest attack. The growing escalation indicates no end in sight in the war, but Kyiv has said its strikes on the Russian capital are intended to damage Russia's offensive capabilities and pressure the Kremlin to negotiate.
At 5:30 a.m. local time on Monday, air raid sirens sounded in all cities of the Republic of Cyprus, marking the 52nd anniversary of July 20, 1974, when Turkey launched its invasion of the island. An initial ceasefire agreement only lasted a few days after the initial incursion, which saw Turkey take control of roughly 3% of the island in its opening offensive. In August 1974, the second phase of the operation, known as Attila II, followed, during which Turkish forces expanded their control to the northern part, and with it seizing over a third of the Mediterranean island. Between 4,000 and 5,000 people were either killed or gone missing from the invasion. International organizations, including the UN, have on numerous occasions pointed towards violations committed by Turkish forces against Greek Cypriots, including violence and displacements. The island nation is currently the only European Union member state with part of its territory under occupation, and the Cyprus issue has remained unresolved for over half a century. Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulides paid tribute to those who died resisting the invasion.
Οι ήρωες μας εδώ στον τύμβο της Μακεδονίας, αλλά και όπου αλλού αναπαύονται ανά το Παγκύπριο, στα φυλακισμένα τμήματα, σε όλες τις περιοχές της ελεύθερης αλλά και της κατεχόμενης Κύπρου, ορίζουν και το χρέος, την ευθύνη όλων εμάς που βρισκόμαστε αυτή τη στιγμή στην ηγεσία του τόπου για να πράξουμε ό,τι είναι δυνατόν για να τερματιστεί η τουρκική κατοχή, να απελευθερώσουμε τον τόπο μας, να επανενώσουμε την πατρίδα μας. Εν όψη της καθόδου του Γενικού Γραμματέα συνεχίζονται οι σχετικές διεργασίες τόσο από τον ίδιο όσο και από την προσωπική του απεσταλμένη, αλλά και από την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση που αποδεικνύει με πράξεις ένα πιο πρωταγωνιστικό ρόλο, ετοιμότητα να διαδραματίσει πρωταγωνιστικό ρόλο και ευελπιστούμε όταν θα είναι εδώ ο Γενικός Γραμματέας να υπάρξουν θετικές ανακοινώσεις προς την κατεύθυνση που σας προανέφερα.
The anniversary comes amid a potential revival of UN-led peace talks between the island's Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot communities, which are aimed at reunifying the island.
Spain's national team marked a historic day of World Cup celebrations on Monday, starting the festivities at the Zarzuela Palace, where the King and the Queen welcomed the world champions. The team also met with Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez before parading through Madrid in an open-top bus. An estimated 2 million supporters filled the streets of the Spanish capital. From the bus, the players waved to the crowds, lifted the World Cup trophy, and celebrated with the supporters lining the streets.
Hoy fiesta, pero bueno, sí, hoy fiesta. Hasta...
Hay que ir tranquilito que mañana toca trabajar, es lo malo.
Tranquilito hasta las 6 de la mañana. Un par de copitas y para casa.
Hasta que abra la oficina.
Aquí con todo el mundo. Así tenemos que celebrar.
¡Vamos España!
La Roja ha vuelto a hacer historia. España ha conquistado su segunda Copa del Mundo y Madrid se ha convertido en el epicentro de esta celebración. Miles de aficionados se han reunido aquí en la Plaza de Cibeles para recibir a una selección que 16 años después ha conquistado su segunda estrella en la camiseta. Banderas, cánticos y un ambiente de euforia es lo que caracteriza esta jornada de celebración que sin duda pasará a la historia del deporte español. Cristina Chuker para Euronews en Madrid.